Let me tell you something that still sends a little ripple through me every time I think about it. I was just fixing a curtain. Something so ordinary, so mundane. And yet what happened that afternoon still echoes in my heart in ways I never expected. It started with a quiet offer of help. But the way he touched the fabric, the way his hand lingered just a second too long, it told me something deeper was unfolding. Before we dive in, I want to know, from which city are you watching us? Drop it in the comments. I'd love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now let me take you back to the beginning of that unexpected afternoon. It was a warm Tuesday sometime in mid-April. The house felt a little too quiet, the kind of silence that settles in when you've been alone for a few days, and start to notice the creaks of the floorboards and the hum of the refrigerator. I had just finished my morning tea and was eyeing the living room curtains, long, floral and heavy, as they hung just a little too low on one side. It had been bothering me for weeks, but I kept putting it off like so many other things lately. At 60, I still prided myself on keeping the house in order. Maybe not as spotless as in my 30s, but I still had a good eye for detail and a steady hand. I pulled the step stool out from the laundry room and with a sigh got to work. I wasn't in any kind of rush. It was one of those days where time stretches slowly and comfortably, the kind of day where the sun spills across the wooden floor, and the smell of citrus cleaner still lingers in the air. I had just climbed up and reached for the curtain rod when the front door creaked open. Aunt Olivia. It was Ethan, my nephew. I hadn't even heard his car pull up. He's 25 now, tall, always wearing that navy hoodie, even in warm weather, and had that quiet, thoughtful way about him. He was my sister's son, and ever since she passed 2 years ago, we'd grown closer, not in a clingy way, just mutual comfort. I suppose I'd become something of a second home for him, a safe space. "Hey," I called without turning around. "I'm just adjusting this curtain." One of the hooks came loose again. There was a pause, then the sound of his shoes on the tile. "You need help?" he asked softly. I glanced over my shoulder and smiled. "I've got it, but you can hand me that little box of hooks from the coffee table." He passed them to me, his fingers brushing mine. Nothing unusual, just a simple pass. But when I looked down just for a split second, his eyes were already on me. Not staring, not inappropriate, just aware. I felt a strange little flutter in my chest, and I didn't quite know why. "Thanks, hon," I said, returning my focus to the curtain rod. The metal piece was being stubborn, not sliding in easily, and I had to lean further to the left, stretching my arm. The stool shifted slightly beneath my feet. "Whoa, careful." Ethan stepped forward instinctively and placed his hands on my waist to steady me. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, just a natural reflex. His hands were warm, firm, reassuring, but something about that moment made my breath hitch. Not in fear, but in awareness. The silence that followed felt thick, as though the room itself had drawn in a breath and was waiting. "I've got you," he said quietly, still holding me. I slowly turned my head, meeting his gaze. It only lasted a moment, but in that moment it was like the world stilled. His hands stayed where they were. Not in a way that made me uncomfortable, not at all. But it wasn't just about balance anymore. It felt different. It felt intentional. "Thanks," I whispered and cleared my throat. He let go slowly, and I stepped down from the stool, suddenly feeling the floor more than I had before. I wasn't sure what I was feeling, or if I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was just lonely. Maybe he was just being kind. But something shifted that day, like the air had changed color. We sat on the couch after that, making small talk. I asked about his classes. He asked about my garden. We laughed a little, shared stories. But every now and then our eyes would meet, and that same quiet would return. Not awkward, not tense, just charged somehow. Like both of us were dancing around something neither of us knew how to name. He helped me cook later that evening. We moved around the kitchen in unspoken rhythm, handing each other utensils, stirring pots, washing dishes. I noticed how easily we moved together, how he anticipated my needs, how his hand would brush mine when we passed each other, and each time I felt that same ripple again. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. But something had changed, and I knew deep in my bones that the curtain wasn't the only thing that had shifted that afternoon. Something between us, something gentle, complicated, and quietly electric had begun to take shape, and I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but I was sure I would feel it again. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight filtered through the freshly adjusted curtains, casting soft lines across the hardwood floor. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at nothing in particular. My fingers ran along the hem of my night cone, and I found myself replaying every moment from the previous day. Not just the words but the silences, the looks, the subtle brush of skin. It wasn't like me to dwell. I had lived enough life to know when something mattered and when it didn't. But this wasn't nothing. I made my way to the kitchen, the hum of the kettle a familiar companion. The house was quiet again, but it felt different now, like the air carried an echo of something unsaid. I poured my tea and sat by the window watching the breeze sway the trees. My thoughts wandered to Ethan, the steadiness of his touch, the softness in his voice, the way he looked at me like he was seeing something he hadn't noticed before. Around 10 o'clock I heard a car door shut outside. I didn't have to look. I knew it was him. I felt it. A soft knock followed. "Come in," I called, already standing. Ethan stepped in, holding a small brown bag. "Brought you those lemon pastries from that little bakery downtown. Figured you could use something sweet with your tea." I smiled genuinely. That was thoughtful. "Thank you." He placed the bat on the counter and leaned casually, his fingers tapping lightly on the granite. His eyes met mine, and there it was again, that lingering gaze that held just a little too long. "I was thinking about yesterday," he said slowly. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable." There it was. The moment I had been both dreading and craving. "No," I said, setting my teacup down. "You didn't. But I noticed. I noticed how you looked at me, how it felt when you touched me." His shoulders tensed just slightly, but he didn't look away. "I didn't mean to cross a line," he said. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I wasn't expecting to feel something, but I did." I let the silence sit for a moment, choosing my next words carefully. "You're not the only one who felt something, Ethan." His eyes widened just a little, but he didn't speak. I continued. "I don't know what it is or what it means, but it's not lost on me, and I'm not pretending it didn't happen." He nodded, stepping closer, not in a rushed way but slow, cautious, like he was testing the space between us. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked gently. I looked up at him, really looked. There was no arrogance in his face, no assumption, just sincerity, vulnerability, and something tender that made my chest ache. "No," I said. "Sit. Let's talk." We sat at the kitchen table, the lemon pastries untouched between us. Our conversation danced around the edges of what had passed. Childhood memories, his struggles with school, my stories from when I was younger. But every now and then it would veer closer to the present, to the feeling neither of us wanted to say out loud yet. "You've always been easy to talk to," he said quietly. "But lately I feel like I'm seeing you differently, like something clicked." "That happens sometimes," I replied. "We get used to seeing people a certain way. Then one day something changes and we can't unsee it." He was quiet for a beat. "Is that how it is for you?" I looked down at my tea, then back up. "Yes, it surprised me. But I'm not afraid of it. Just careful." We moved to the living room after a while. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, and the familiar creak of the old couch felt like home. He sat close but not too close. There was a tension between us, not heavy, not uncomfortable, more like a string pulled taut between two hands. Present, alive. He reached out and gently touched my hand. No words, just his touch, warm and quiet, like a question waiting to be answered. I didn't pull away. The moment stretched, not needing anything else. No labels, no rush, just presence. And in that space I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not romance, not desire. Exactly. Something deeper, a stirring. A reminder that connection can come from the most unexpected places. I didn't know where this would go, but I knew I wanted to see it through. That night I found it hard to sleep, not from restlessness or worry, but from the quiet hum that lingered inside me. It wasn't loud or overwhelming, just a steady presence, like the low echo of a song you didn't know you missed until you heard it again. I lay in bed, the moonlight casting gentle shadows across the ceiling, and let my mind wander. Ethan's hand in mine, his eyes, when I said he didn't make me uncomfortable. The way he waited, not to be invited, but to be understood. I hadn't felt this kind of emotional stir in years. After my husband passed, I thought that part of my life was simply done. Not because I didn't deserve connection, but because I'd made peace with the kind of quiet that comes with age. I had my memories, my rhythms, my little rituals. And now I had questions. The next morning I dressed more intentionally than usual. Nothing extravagant, just a soft navy blouse and my silver earrings. The ones that made me feel like myself. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted to feel present. He came by again around 11. No pastries this time, just himself with that same soft knock and hesitant smile. I figured I could help with the garden, he said, glancing at the gloves in his hand. Didn't finish pulling the weeds last time. I smiled. I'd like that. We worked together in silence at first. The sun was warm but not harsh, and the soil gave way easily beneath our hands. I could feel his presence beside me. Not looming, just steady. Every once in a while we'd exchange a glance or a soft comment. Nothing pressing, just two people existing in the same rhythm. At one point I leaned back on my heels, wiping a smudge of dirt from my cheek. He looked over and laughed gently. "You've got a bit of mud right there." He reached out without thinking and brushed it off my cheek with his thumb. It was such a small thing, so innocent. And yet, when his hand lingered just a moment too long, the air around us changed. I looked at him. He looked at me. Neither of us moved. There was something in his eyes. Not lust, not boldness, just care. A tender kind of awareness, as if he too didn't quite understand this feeling, but was willing to sit with it. "You're looking at me differently again," I said quietly. He gave a half smile. "I know. I've been trying not to, but it's hard to ignore." We both sat down on the grass then, backs against the old wooden fence, side by side. The breeze rustled the leaves and somewhere down the street a dog barked, breaking the silence like a punctuation mark. "I don't want to hurt you," he said after a while, "or make things complicated." "You haven't," I said, "but things can be complicated and still be meaningful." He nodded slowly. "I just keep thinking about how this probably looks from the outside." "I've thought about that too," I admitted. "But I've also lived long enough to know that people will always see what they want to see. What matters is what's real in here." I placed a hand gently on my chest. He looked at me, then really looked, and something in him softened. "I feel calm when I'm with you," he said. "Not excited, not nervous, just safe." That word, safe. It settled over me like a warm blanket. He shifted slightly, his shoulder brushing mine. I didn't move away. I closed my eyes for a second and let the moment breathe. I could feel the sun on my face, the soft earth beneath me, the nearness of someone who saw me not as a relative or an obligation, but as a woman fully and completely. Later that evening he stayed for dinner. We cooked together again, grilled chicken and fresh vegetables from the garden. It was all so effortless, so ordinary. But underneath the ordinary, something extraordinary was growing. After we ate, we sat on the back porch wrapped in light blankets, watching the sky shift from orange to lavender. "I don't want to rush this," he said, turning to me. "I don't even know what this is, but I don't want to lose it either." I nodded. "We don't have to name it yet. We can just be in it." He reached for my hand again, this time with no hesitation. I held it, our fingers intertwining like they'd done it 100 times before. In that quiet under the slowly darkening sky, something unspoken passed between us. Not a promise, not a confession, just presence. And in that presence I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The simple beauty of being seen. The days that followed unfolded with a quiet intimacy. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but settles in like an old song, returning to memory. Nothing grand happened. No declarations, no sweeping gestures. Just small, meaningful moments that stitched themselves together in ways I hadn't expected and couldn't ignore. Ethan started coming by more regularly. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes nothing at all. We didn't make plans. He just appeared like a familiar rhythm. And each time we fell into an ease that felt too natural to be forced. We'd tend to the garden, fix little things around the house, or simply sit by the window and talk about everything and nothing. There was one evening, though, one that stood out, not for anything dramatic, but because it was when I finally let myself stop resisting. We were sitting in the den, rain tapping gently against the windows. I had lit a few candles. I always loved how their glow made the room feel warmer, softer. He sat across from me, legs stretched out, a book in his lap that neither of us was really reading. "You ever think about how life might have been different if things had gone another way?" he asked suddenly. I'd looked at him, the flicker of the candle catching in his eyes. All the time, I said. But I've also learned that sometimes the unexpected path gives us what we didn't know we needed. He looked down then back at me. I used to think you were just family, someone to visit, to check in on, but lately I feel like I see you, like really see you. I swallowed gently. And how does that make you feel? He hesitated, then smiled, a small, honest smile. Like I want to stay longer every time I come over. Like the air feels lighter when I'm here. I stood up and walked over to the window, watching the rain run in little rivers down the glass. There's a part of me, I said slowly, that still wonders if this is just a moment, a passing phase for you. You're young. Your life is still unfolding. He stood too, stepping beside me. Maybe that's true. Maybe I'll look back on this someday and see it as a turning point. But what I know right now here in this moment is that this matters to me. You matter to me. His hand found mine again. Familiar now. Comforting. I turned to face him. We have to be careful. This connection. It's real, but it walks a thin line. I know, he said. But I'm not here because I don't understand the line. I'm here because I do, and I still want to be close. I closed my eyes for a moment. Let the weight of those words wash over me. There was truth in them. And there was also a kind of grace, the understanding that not all connections are built to last forever, but some are meant to be fully lived while they do. When I opened my eyes, I found myself smiling. Not wide, not bold, just gently. You want some tea? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. We moved to the kitchen. As the kettle began to hum, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, slow, tentative at first, then certain. I leaned back into him. We stay like that for a long time. The steam rising between us, the moment stretching in a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Later, as he stood at the door ready to leave, he paused. I don't know where this is going, he said. But I'm not afraid of it. I just want to walk through it with you, one step at a time. I nodded. That's all we can do. He left into the misty evening, and I stood there for a moment, the door still slightly ajar. I didn't feel confusion anymore or guilt. What I felt was gratitude for something real, however complicated. For a connection that reminded me I was still here, still seen, still capable of something unexpected. And sometimes that's more than enough.